A group of children once asked Pope Francis, "Holy Father, what do you pray every day?" Then Pope Francis took a small book of the Stations of the Cross and said, "I pray and meditate the Stations of the Cross every day." The Stations of the Cross is not just a prayer for Lent, but a prayer that can be prayed at any time, especially in this time of COVID-19. Let us pray the Stations of the Cross, written specifically for this time.
First station, Jesus is condemned to die. Jesus was captured at night, taken away by soldiers, stripped of his garments, interrogated, tortured, crowned with sharp thorns, and handed over to be condemned to death by Pontius Pilate. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. We continue to blame and condemn people unjustly. In these days, it is easy to blame the country where COVID-19 originated, its people and government, because of their action and inaction. We also blame people because of the colour of their skin, their gender, their sexuality, their beliefs, because they are born with a disability, because they do not conform to our way of thinking. The list is endless. Take a moment to call to mind an individual or a group who you know feel condemned and pray for them.
The second station of the cross. Jesus takes up his cross. Jesus was led away carrying the cross by himself. A cross is not just a piece of wood. It is everything that makes life difficult. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. There are burdens that we all carry. Some are very obvious, and others we take great care to hide. As a world community, we carry the burden of COVID-19. There are the burdens of other illness, pain and disability, of old age, dependence, and caring for someone who no longer knows who we are. Take a moment to call to mind a group or individual who is carrying burdens at this time and pray for them.
Third station, Jesus falls for the first time. Jesus falls but struggles to his feet again and carries on the long road to Calvary. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. Like the crowd, we often have only condemnation and rejection for those around us. We judge them without knowing about their trials. In these days, are we aware of those we judge and condemn because of their actions in the COVID-19 crisis? Take a moment to call to mind anyone that you have judged or condemned and pray for them.
Fourth station, Jesus meets his mother. When Jesus and his mother meet, they just look at each other. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. We see the pain in the mothers and fathers who watch their children suffering from COVID-19, or in those giving up their life to drugs, addictions and suicide. We see pain in the children coping with the breakdown of a parent's marriage, in the couple trying desperately to rebuild their relationship and family anew. We see pain in those children watching and hoping as their parents fade away before them. Take a moment to call to mind anyone in tragic circumstances and pray for them.
Fifth station, Simon helps Jesus. Simon the Cyrene, a stranger in the city, did not know Jesus, but that did not matter. He was going to have to help anyway, and he no doubt walked the Jesus way. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. Across our world we see suffering in the faces of strangers, particularly in the anguish of those dealing with COVID-19, in the faces of those struggling for democracy, in the faces of those dealing with loss of life and destruction of property. People we know of but do not know must live with the aftermath of ravages and destructive forces of nature, coping with floods and droughts, with the devastating effects of climate change. Take a moment to call to mind someone you know who is suffering at this time and ask yourself whether or not you are willing to help.
The sixth station. Veronica wipes the face of Jesus. Veronica was so moved by the sight of Jesus' suffering that she courageously moved out from the crowd to wipe the blood and sweat from his face with a towel. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you,
because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world.
Today, the visible face of Christ, the Church, stands before us, still wounded and disfigured. Individuals suffering in so many ways, not least in the current pandemic, but also disfigured by its own sins of power, abuse of children, and weighed down with the wounds of hurt and betrayal. Take a moment to call to mind your own church community and take a few moments to pray for them.
The seventh station, Jesus falls for the second time. Stretched to breaking point by his scourging, bowed under the weight of the cross, Jesus falls again. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you,
because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world.
All around us, people are overburdened by the crosses that they carry. They struggle and sometimes fall. There are those at this time who have lost their jobs and feel that they have little hope of finding another, and those who struggle desperately to keep others in work. There are those who suffer because of failures in our financial, health and political systems. Take a moment to call to mind those you know or who have heard of at this time and pray for them.
The eighth station. Jesus meets the women of Jerusalem. The women of Jerusalem wept when they saw how Jesus suffered. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. Weep for those who have COVID-19. Weep for the doctors and the nurses and those on the front line who struggle. Weep for the children who are abused. Weep for the women who are victimised. Weep for the old who are forgotten. Weep for people who starve in the shadow of abundance. Weep for people who are homeless, in exile or seeking refuge. Take a moment to call to mind a group or individual who is struggling at this time. Weep for them and pray for them.
The 9th station of the cross. Jesus falls for the 3rd time. Jesus falls for a 3rd time, broken and exhausted, physically and emotionally. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. Many in our world today feel that they are at that moment of final falling, that the burden of COVID-19 is too great to bear. Think of Italy, Spain and China, as well as our own country, and the medics who work so hard. Think of those who are sick and of those who are dying. Take a moment to call to mind a group or individual who is broken and exhausted, and pray for them.
Tenth station. Jesus is stripped of his clothing, as the clothes were ripped from Jesus. He was stripped of his dignity in front of an irreverent mob. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. Jesus continues to be stripped of his dignity today in those who have to endure treatment for COVID-19, some of whom are so ill they don't know where they are. Take a moment to call to mind those hospital wards you have seen on TV, full to bursting, and pray for those in them.
Eleventh station. Jesus is nailed to the cross. Huge iron nails are hammered through his wrists and his ankles. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. Jesus continues to be crucified in all those suffering in our world, in the effects of COVID-19, in the 10 children who die every minute of hunger, in all who are maimed, damaged, or displaced by war, in all those who are marginalised in our society because of their race, sexuality, or gender, in those who are abused physically, sexually, or emotionally, in those who are trafficked across the world, and in the exploitation of the earth and its resources. Take a moment to call to mind those you are aware of who are crucified each day by the lives that they are living, and pray for them.
The 12th station, Jesus dies on the cross. As the life of Jesus ebbs away, his words are not of condemnation or of pity for himself, but of forgiveness as he cries from the cross, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do." We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. There is much to seek forgiveness for in our world today: hunger, poverty, violence, abuse, war, neglect, and corruption. Maybe in these times we could remember those who have stockpiled food out of panic, but with little thought for others. Take a moment to call to mind a group or individual that needs forgiveness, maybe even yourself, and take time to pray for them.
The 13th station. Jesus is taken down from the cross.
Mary takes the broken body of her Son in her arms. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world.
Mary's grief is our grief too. She stands with all parents who have held their children close to them in death. Those who have died in the pandemic, sweeping the world. Those lost through accidents or acts of violence. Those who have died by suicide. Those who died suddenly or after illness. All those who grieve for loved ones. Take a moment to call to mind a group or an individual that has lost someone close that they love, maybe even yourself, and take time to pray for them.
The 14th station, Jesus is laid in the tomb. That night his body lay in the dark earth. All those who had loved him felt emptied and exhausted. They seemed no longer any sense or purpose in anything. They closed the tomb and left. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world.
There are times when we are overcome by the darkness of the tomb, by the countless deaths that we experience each day. But the answer to all our grieving and despair lies in this place. The grain of wheat sown in darkness and in death has indeed yielded a richer harvest. Take a moment to call to mind a group or individual who is placed in the tombs that life has created for them and pray for them.
The 15th station, Jesus is risen. On Easter Day, the sun rose and so did the Christ, the eternal icon for humanity. Where he has gone, we will most surely follow. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you. For by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. Good Friday is never the end of the story for us and for the world. Christ is risen. This pandemic is not the final full stop. Christ is risen. The pain and suffering in the world are never the end of the story and will never defeat the truth that Christ is risen. Take a moment to thank God for the power of the resurrection, even over COVID-19. Call to mind anyone you know who needs resurrection in their lives and pray for them.